Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Game Theory reaction, and it's The Minecraft Sniffer is More Important Than You Think. Now, a title like that gets me thinking. You see, I'm pretty sure if you go back to like every game theory that I've reacted to that involves Minecraft, I've said in it that, and again, I can't remember where I first saw this, but I agree with it wholeheartedly. But with every update that we've gotten to Minecraft, it especially feels like a post-apocalyptic world slowly healing to a point where, you know, it can be healthy. If you go to like the very early alphas, it was just like sort of empty like forests with, you know, monsters roaming, like giant spiders, zombies, skeletons, and creepers eventually. But then, like, the biome started diversifying. There were, like, peaceful animals coming back, you know, like the cows, pigs, sheep, you know, those classics. And then it's like you keep going on and on like that. And then eventually they added the Sniffer, which is an ancient animal that you yourself bring back from extinction, and it sniffs out seeds of what are presumably extinct plants. Now, if that doesn't have something to do with ecological restoration, I don't know what does. I can't help but feel that this might be the theory talking about like how Minecraft's world is healing. And, oh god, I really hope that is, because I know I don't have the best track record when it comes to guessing what theory videos are going to be about, unless it's, like, literally stated in the title. And with something like that, I need a win for this. So yeah, you can say I'm a bit excited to see this one. But yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Again, why are you watching a reaction and before the original video? Corner video will lead to my film theory reaction, and if you have any suggestions for future reactions for me to watch, you can of course leave them in the comment section below, or you can head over to my Discord server, link in the description, and you can leave the video there. So yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
What is the Sniffer? This fascinating creature looks vastly different than any other creature we've ever seen on this earth. Once thought an extinct creature, the Sniffer's eggs were excavated from a warm ocean ruin, allowing us to enjoy these ancient creatures today.
Wait, did you say ancient? Oh, buddy, you know what that means.
Yeah, lore.
Hello, Internet. Well,
yeah, always, it doesn't matter who the host is, there's always lore. As I said, this has to have something to do with ecological reconstruction, or restoration, that's the proper word for it.
welcome to Game Theory, the show that's always sniffing for clues and digging up lore. And you guys have no idea how happy I am to be doing this episode. I've written a number of Minecraft theories in my time, but this one is my Minecraftian white whale. I was so excited when the Trails and Tales update came out almost a year ago. Finally, an update that was going to focus on the ancient lore of Minecraft. And what did Mojang give us? Some lines on our armor and pieces of broken pots. Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting update. It was certainly no Warden, that's for sure. But we made the most of it, and we managed to use those broken pots and armor trims to figure out that the ancient builders weren't one collective group, but a number of tribes, each with their own specific resources. However, there is one part of this update that we've purposefully ignored. One that I'm sure the keen miners and crafters among you have already noticed. The winner of the completely legitimate mob vote of 2022, the Sniffer.
And the winner is the Sniffer.
This is a mob that apparently went extinct, but if you find an egg, you can hatch it, and from that point on, it'll spend its time walking around sniffing for special seeds that it'll then dig up. It's a pretty unique mechanic. Plus, the idea of finding an egg rather than taming a wild mob is a fun idea. And in the past, whenever a new mob has been added, we've made sure to do a video covering it as soon as possible. So why, after almost a year, is there no video on this adorable thick boy? Well,
actually, wait a second, thinking about it, bringing back the Sniffer, it almost has like a lot of Jurassic Park vibes, doesn't it? Because I mean, obviously, you're not like, it's not like a man-eating dinosaur or something like that. But the fact that you find an egg for a species that has been extinct for, I mean, if we go on like at the very least, like the scale of civilization for at like several thousand years, and you find this egg that is not only like a fossil. Well, it wouldn't be a fossil after that short amount of time, but you know what I'm talking about. But not only is it like still viable as just being an egg, but it's fertilized and can actually be brought to term. Is that the right word for eggs? But like you can make it hatch is the thing. So like they might be like really slow and lumbering, but the sniffers are like godly when it comes to at least like the survival of their young. If you can have an egg like last that long, like outside of not only care but like underwater, which, you know, looking at the sniffer you'd think would not be their normal natural habitat. Also, I never noticed that it had 6 legs.
Well, because despite me trying over and over and over again, I couldn't figure out where it fits into the lore that we've been building for the past 4 years. I knew it had to fit in somewhere, because Mojang were really keen on using one specific word during its reveal.
Players can hatch this ancient mob and help it thrive. We also believe it has ancient knowledge to share.
Look at them. They're practically mocking me. But no more, because after almost
Yeah, I
a year of
remember
driving
that.
myself insane, much like a snifflet hatching from an egg, I finally cracked it. I figured out what the ancient mysteries this dump truck of a mob is hiding. So grab your excavation brushes, friends. It's time to uncover the lost history of the Minecraft sniffer. Let's start with finding these dang things. The only way to get your hands on a sniffer is to find one of their eggs buried in suspicious sand. Specifically, suspicious sand that you find in warm ocean ruins. These ruins belong to the fisherman tribe of ancient builders, as shown by the angular pottery sherd that you can also find in the suspicious sand of these ruins. We've discussed these guys many times before on this channel. They would go on to cause the sea levels to rise, eventually flooding their tribe and leaving nothing behind but ocean monuments and these small ruins. But there are actually 2 other sherds that you can find from this tribe of fishermen, and one of them is especially interesting for our purposes today. It's called the snort sherd, and on it we find a
Snort
familiar
sherd.
creature, the sniffer. This proves that Mojang calling this thing an ancient mob was absolutely on purpose, because the existence of this sherd tells us that the sniffer was alive at the same time as the ancient builder fisherman tribe, as they were the ones who carved these images into the pots. But of course, this episode isn't just about proving they coexisted. We need to figure out why they coexisted. Sniffers aren't exactly known for catching fish. So what use would they have been to a tribe of fishermen? Well, it turns out there are a couple of
Foraging!
reasons.
Yeah.
The first one is simple. As I mentioned earlier, the sniffer's main mechanic is to, well, sniff. By sniffing, they find things buried in the ground and they can dig them up. Kind of like truffle pigs, but instead of a tasty topping for your chips, sorry, fries.
No, chips is correct. I will not have the British slandered any longer. But yeah, that is the thing. Like, it could have very much. I mean, we don't know. It could have been like a domesticated thing, like pigs. But like the ancient, like seafaring ancient builders. I mean, like they obviously didn't spend all their time on the water. They, you know, had land-based settlements. It just a lot of stuff was done on land. But it would be stupid to not, you know, take advantage of like the resources that are around you, and you probably have one with like an ancient builder or a couple with an ancient builder or what have you, and they would just go foraging into the forest, into the fields, and just find, you know, edible stuff to eat.
The sniffer instead digs up special seeds, torch flower seeds and pitcher plant seeds. These flowers honestly don't serve much purpose. They can be used to make dyes and they make nice decoration, but they aren't particularly useful, especially given how hard they are to get. However, there is one more use for the torch flower specifically, something that would be useful for the fisherman tribe. By mixing the torch flower into a suspicious stew recipe, you create a stew that gives you the night vision effect. Night vision is especially useful if you're wanting to
Right.
explore ocean monuments.
I've never
And as the
done. Yeah,
water-
that's the thing. I've never used that much. I've never done that much with suspicious stew because I can never remember all the recipes for it.
levels begin to rise for the warm ocean and the neighboring cold ocean tribes, this would become a must-have ability. That cold ocean tribe, a tribe of pirates, would eventually be sent out to find the ingredients for a conduit, an item that would also give the tribe's night vision as well as underwater breathing. But in the meantime, the suspicious stew would take care of at least one of those issues. And what do we find on the sunken ships that belong to that tribe of pirates? That's right, suspicious stew. Though that
Yeah.
isn't the only thing we can learn from these special plants. I mean, it'd be a bit weird for Mojang to introduce 2 new plants and for only one of them to be actually useful. I felt kind of bad for the pitcher plant. So, in classic Minecraft fashion, I kept digging. And in doing so, I struck gold or diamonds. Or is it netherite? But just like the mobs in the game, a lot of the
netherite's
plants
only in the nether
tend to be related to real-world plants, like roses, sunflowers, tulips. You get the idea.
Yeah.
So, I took a look at what the real-world counterparts are for the torch flower and the pitcher plant. The pitcher plant is easy enough because it's just a
pitcher plant
that exists, though there are many varieties. Torch flowers, on the other hand, don't exist, at least not by that name. They resemble the Nymphophea genus, commonly known as the red hot poker or torch plant. I mean, come on, it's not rocket science. I think we can pretty much call that one confirmed. But
I mean, I would say that's a bit on the nose, but then we have the pitcher plant sitting right next to it.
plants are native to the tropical and southern parts of the African continent, with torch plants mostly being in the mountainous south and varieties of pitcher plants being found in both Madagascar and the Seychelles. And this actually lines up with what we see in Minecraft. There's one more warm ocean pottery sherd that we are yet to talk about, and this one is called Shelter. It depicts an acacia tree, a type of tree that grows in the savanna biomes of the overworld, but they also grow in tropical regions like Africa, meaning that before they eventually flooded, the fisherman tribe lived in a savanna-style biome, near an ocean to allow for fishing, but also tropical enough in climate to allow the torch flower, pitcher plants, and acacia trees to grow. And opening the door to their African inspirations also revealed another important detail about these plants. While they may not actually give you night vision in real life, in indigenous cultures, they were used as medicine. The pitcher plant was used to help with things like constipation, urinary tract infections, even diabetes, while the torch flower has been used to treat malaria, hepatitis B, eczema, female infertility, and a bunch more. These types of medicinal plants were used specifically by traditional healers known as Inyanga, and people would travel 4 miles just for a chance to receive medical care from them, which means the warm ocean tribe wasn't just a tribe of fishermen, they were also a tribe of Inyanga, and so would use the sniffer to find the seeds for these medicinal plants.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so I was a bit off on the foraging for food part, but I mean, foraging for medical ingredients, yeah, that's kind of important now, isn't it? Though that being said, in a world like Minecraft where you can regain health just by eating an apple, what medicinal properties do these flowers have that makes them so special?
They then use them as a source of night vision in their suspicious stews for their explorers, or to heal any ancient build that needed help with their recent zombie bites. This is why the sniffers are depicted on their pottery sherds. Much like fishing, they were a cornerstone of their society, and that's why all these years later we can find their eggs buried in the ruins of the cities they used to help. However, while this is where the sniffers ended up, it isn't actually where they started. And if you think these guys are big now, well, oh buddy, do I have a surprise for you. If you go underground in the overworld, you have a chance of finding generated structures known as fossils. They've been in the game since version 1.10,
Wait, really?
all the way back in 2016, and yet we've never been able to figure out what kind of creatures they relate to. The game files label these fossils as either fossil skull number 1 to 4 or fossil spine, also number 1 to 4. These fossils are skeletons of dead creatures from a long forgotten time, an ancient time, if you will. And at this point, you can probably see where I'm going with it.
Oh my god, okay, so... Oh god, absolutely gigantic sniffers. Okay, so that brings... Okay. So that brings in 2 possibilities. One, that either says that A, sniffers are one of those animals that just, you know, continually grow larger throughout their entire life. I mean, given that I mean, I can definitely see that. Though, I mean, for an animal with vertebrae, that's kind of strange. Usually, like, animals with a skeleton that stop growing at a certain point. Or also saying that the sniffers could just have, you know, a very large final size. But the option B could also be that, you know, sniffers used to be these absolutely gigantic creatures, but through like breeding and domestication, they were brought down to be smaller. It's literally not out of the question. I mean, you just have to look at a dog. I mean, look at the size of how big a wolf is versus a chihuahua. It's hard to believe that those things are closely related enough that they could technically breed. Though oh god, I feel so sorry for if the chihuahua was the mother in that instance.
this. By using Spine 4 and Skull 3 together, it looks like the skeleton of a massive sniffer with big nostrils and a large barrel body. Now, I know what you're thinking. The sniffer is pretty big, but it's not
that big.
Whatever
Well,
these
maybe
skeletons are, they
literal-
were massive beasts, larger than the biggest mob in the game, the Ender Dragon. However, I do have an explanation for this. Domestication and natural selection. Domestication
Literally
is the
what I
process
said.
of taming an animal to keep as a pet, or
Though, I
to
mean,
use for work
natural
tasks like
selection, yeah,
farming.
of course,
Dogs
that
were
too.
domesticated from a species of wolf known as the grey wolf from around 130,000 years ago. With time, the wolves became more obedient, more docile, and yes, smaller. This is because the smaller the creature, the easier it is to control, and the less likely it is to overpower you. And so humans would specifically
Also, there is an important part of that. The smaller an animal is, usually the less amount of food you have to feed them, which, you know, during early civilization, you'd think that'd be kind of important. Though also, again, thinking about the whole thing, that, again, the giant sniffers and, like, shrinking due to evolution, I mean, yeah, definitely can see that. I mean, look at the woolly mammoths. Elephants, I mean, they're big now, but woolly mammoths were smaller. And there were even, like, small breeds of, like, woolly mammoth. I'm forgetting what they were called, but they found fossil woolly mammoths on the islands, and they were, like, 1 or 2 meters tall. They were tiny compared to their normal relatives. I'm forgetting what it's called, but there's a phenomena that they've noticed, like, talking about, like, how certain like species will, like, usually get smaller on islands. Actually, it's either smaller or bigger. They can go either ways.
the smaller ones in order to pass down that trait. This is likely what happened to the sniffer. The smaller ones were tamed and chosen to breed because, let's be honest, it's going to be pretty hard to keep control of a beast whose body alone is 5 meters tall. For reference,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
the total height of a giraffe. You make one of these things angry, and it's going to stomp you out of existence. Now, natural selection and domestication takes a long time. To get the size difference between the sniffer fossil and the sniffer we have today, it would have taken thousands upon thousands of years. And that's something we haven't actually talked about when covering the ancient builders. Normally, for the sake of keeping these Minecraft theories clear and concise, we tend to put all the events in quick succession. We go from the ancient builders going back in time to saving the world to dooming the world to dying out, all within 25 minutes.
Yeah, so, I mean, but again, like, civilization has been around for a long time. So you never really get the scale of how long these ancient builders could have really been around for. Because, I mean, like, you look at technological progress, and sometimes it's slow and gradual, but other times it's like, it happens in, like, starts, where, like, there'll be a sudden, like, elevation in technology. And, like, I could very much see it that these ancient builders were around for a long time before they discovered how to smelt iron, or go to the Nether, or, you know, eventually, you know, go to the end, you know, that sort of stuff. Stuff like that takes time to learn. Now, again, that kind of thing goes over to the game, where how do you, the player, know it, and how do you just instantly know how to create these recipes by touching or getting certain ingredients? But, you know, that's probably more just a gameplay mechanic at this point.
But what we've never talked about is how long each of those eras took. For this example, the fisherman tribe created a bunch of greenhouse gases that caused the water levels to rise, and eventually they all drowned. It sounds like it happened very quickly, but giant monuments aren't suddenly submerged overnight. From 1880
No,
to
definitely not.
2022, sea levels have only risen 8 to 9 inches, or about 20 to 23 centimeters. In 140 years, the water hasn't risen enough to drown a city. However, given enough time, it very well could. Current predictions are that in the next 2,000 years, sea levels are likely to rise between 2 to 3 meters, or 6.5 to 10 feet, if temperatures go up by the expected 1.5 degrees Celsius.
And that's also the thing where it's not only that, but well, I mean, granted, I know, like, the time of actually building stuff in Minecraft is kind of skewed just because of, you know, the way the game plays. But in real life, like, even more, like, relatively modern monuments, like medieval cathedrals and stuff like that, took hundreds of years to build in some cases. Now, granted, sometimes that wasn't because it would literally take that long to build, but because, oh hey, we ran out of money. But still, I think, like, the simplest you could say would be, like, the pyramids being built within a single lifetime, because, you know, they were built as like tombs, but at the same time, they're, you know, relatively simple buildings. They're huge. They're not like the intricate, like, stone carved cathedrals you'd see later on or churches or mausoleums that you'd see later in history. And, like, not to disparage, like, the ancient Egyptians at all, because, like, I know, like, just, the logistics of having to build something like that are absolutely nuts, especially back then. But a pyramid is essentially just a really fancy way of piling a bunch of rocks so they don't fall over for a really long time.
Or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. That is definitely going to put some of our cities underwater. But an ocean monument is 28 meters tall. For those to be underwater, it would mean temperatures rising by about 5 degrees Celsius or 9 degrees Fahrenheit. And even then, it would still take 10,000 years based on most predictions. And that would be the perfect amount of time for the ancient builders to breed the Sniffers to be smaller and more manageable like we see today. There's just one teeny tiny flaw in this otherwise perfect solution.
And what is that?
You can't find these particular fossils in the warm ocean biomes.
Oh, no,
them
yeah.
in the deserts. So far, everything has been connecting them to the warm ocean tribe. So why would their giant skeletons be found in a different biome?
Well, I mean, I could very easily, say that it's because the deserts were not always deserts. I mean, granted, we find the desert ruins and stuff like that, but who's to say that as they warmed up the world, their original savannas turned into deserts and they moved? Who's to say that the desert civilization and the coastal fishing civilization, they weren't contemporaries, they were one that led to the other? That's an idea right there.
Well, as it usually does, it comes back to the troublemakers of the ancient builder world, the desert tribe, the scientists who dared to push the boundaries of the world they lived in. Warm oceans are typically found next to deserts due to them sharing the same climate, making these tribes neighbors, likely sharing resources and technology, which would
Okay, never mind. Yeah, I guess, that does also make sense.
come in handy when the desert tribe began experimenting with potions that could help them breathe underwater. The desert tribe were also the ones who eventually crossed over into the Nether, trying to find a solution for the rising oceans that their neighbors had caused. And this is where I believe the final piece of the Sniffer puzzle falls into place. Take a look at the Sniffer again. Notice its colors. Animals typically adapt to their environments, and one way this happens is by changing the color of their skin or fur to better blend in with their surroundings.
Yeah,
this
of course.
again happens through natural selection. The animals that blend in are much more likely to survive, allowing them to mate and pass on those colorful genes. But the Sniffer's colors don't blend in with any overworld biome. The red and teal stick out like a sore thumb against the various greens, blues, and yellows. But you know what they do blend in with? The colors of the Nether. Specifically, the red netherrack and teal warped nylium of the warped forest biome. And this is where I believe the Sniffer originally came from. Nylium is the Nether's version of mycelium, and mycelium is a mass of branched wires that connect fungi together. So, nylium is a fungus, or at least part of one, which would explain why the Sniffer's back is a different color from its body. We see this kind of thing happen with animals like sloths, whose fur changes color due to the algae growing in it, which just so happens to work as the perfect camouflage. The Sniffer evolved its red fur to blend in with the netherrack of the Nether, and then while living in the warped forests, the warped nylium fungus spread and attached itself to the Sniffer's fur, helping it blend in even more. The Nether might also explain the whole 6 legs thing. Most overworld passive mobs are based on real-world animals, but there are no mammals with 6 legs. It's just not how they're built. However, mobs in the Nether like to break this rule of realism. We've got walking pigs, giant ghosts, and passive mobs like the Strider, and just look at them. They are
Strider's
from normal.
weird.
A creature with 6 legs would feel right at home here. But the final nail in the Sniffer's giant coffin comes back to the fossils. They don't just generate in the overworld, they also generate in the Nether's soul sand valleys. These fossils are specifically of different parts of the body. Rather than spines and skulls, we have rib cages of varying sizes, which could relate back to our giant Sniffer. After all, animals of the same species often come in a variety of sizes. But there is one fossil that is different. Fossil 2 is labeled as a horizontal sternum. The sternum is a T-shaped flat bone that in mammals sits at the front of the rib cage, and it is the missing piece of our puzzle. When you place this sternum into the spine 4 that we found in the overworld, the spine and rib cage of the Sniffer, it fits perfectly. These are the bones of the same creature, meaning the Sniffer had to, at some point, be in the Nether. So, if the Nether is their rightful home based on their color, physiology, and fossils, why aren't there any seeds for them to dig up? The Sniffer's only function is to dig for torchflower and pitcher plant seeds, but if you take a Sniffer back to the Nether, they won't dig up anything, even if you place down more grass blocks. These seeds don't exist here, or maybe it's that they don't exist here anymore. In another theory, we proved that the Nether was not always the fiery landscape it is now. The existence of the basalt deltas showed us that there was once an ice age, as you need ice and soul soil for basalt to be created. This means water had to exist in the Nether, so more traditional traditional plants like torch flowers and pitcher plants could definitely have grown here. We've also spoken about the biodiversity in the Nether, and how in the past there used to be many more species of flora and fauna, like torch flowers and
Right,
pitcher
yeah,
plants.
Minecraft
But both the
Dungeons,
Ice Age
right.
and the biodiversity came to an end thanks to the piglins heating up the atmosphere by industrializing, creating weapons and armor to conquer more worlds. So we have evidence that these giant sniffers existed in the Soul Sand valleys, and so it would make sense that at one point in time these seeds and flowers used to exist in this part of the Nether. But when the valleys dried up, there were no more seeds for the sniffers to eat, causing them to starve and die out, with their fossils being all that remained. The ones that did survive would need to find a new biome, a biome with plant life that they might be able to live off, the forests of the Nether. Due to their red fur, they would blend in really well with the Crimson Forest. However, the Crimson Forest is home to hoglins and piglins, both hostile mobs, with the latter being specifically known for hunting. Now, of course, these are giant sniffers, so you might think that piglins and hoglins aren't going to be much of a threat. But the
Yeah, again, the story of mammoths and their relationships with humans. Major citation right there, if you need it.
Neanderthals used to hunt massive creatures like woolly mammoths, and they would often target the much smaller offspring, as they would be much easier to hunt or kill, and that could lead to extinction, which is why they ended up inhabiting the Warped Forest. The Warped Forest is home to the Striders, a passive mob that was no threat to the Snifflets. Plus, mobs like the Hoglin are afraid of warped fungus, running away when within 7 blocks of the stuff. It was the perfect place to hide, and over time, the Warped Nylian began to grow on their backs, further blending them into the forest. But as we know, their journey isn't over yet. Eventually, the Desert Tribe entered the Nether, discovering the magical properties that the mobs of this world could provide them. Things like blaze rods, magma balls, and gas tears. And so, they wanted to see what the Sniffer was capable of. Despite its size, the Sniffer was a docile creature, and so they were able to lure it back to the overworld. They began selectively breeding them to make them more
smaller and
but
smaller.
during that time, they noticed the Sniffers were clearly looking for something. And when they wandered a little further to patches of grass, they dug up seeds that no one had seen before. Grass was a rare sight in the desert, and the Sniffers can't dig up sand blocks. However, there was plenty of grass in the neighboring savanna-like warm ocean biome. So the Desert Tribe gave the Sniffers to their neighbors, the fishermen, to allow the Sniffers to find more seeds and maybe find a use for them. They lived close to the
And
water
trade
had the right
them back
conditions
to
for
the
these
desert
plants to grow.
civilization.
When they did, the fishermen began to experiment with them, learning of their medicinal and night vision properties, allowing them to create stews that would aid them in their efforts to see deep into the water as they fished, or create medicines to heal their wounds. The tribe became more than just fishermen. They were now a tribe of healers. Sadly though, these advances didn't stop the rising tides.
No,
While
yeah,
the
of
fishermen and
course.
healers would eventually turn into the drowned that we know today, with their knowledge of the plant's healing properties lost to time, the Sniffers weren't so lucky. They didn't transform into something else. They just drowned,
Died, yeah.
leaving just a few eggs buried in the sand for us to find many years later. So, if you do find a Sniffer, be kind to it, because now you know all the pain and suffering its ancestors went through, just so you could have a nice looking houseplant. And with that, I'm going to call this white whale officially conquered.
Wonderful theory. Absolutely loved that. But unfortunately, I was still wrong on guessing what the topic of the theory was actually going to be about. So, yeah, I'll take the L on that one. But I mean, okay, but even just going back, I mean, but the idea that the Sniffers would have been originally from the Nether, that is so odd. I mean, I didn't say it at the time of the video because I was kind of caught up just paying attention, but something I thought of initially was the whole fact that, with like piglins, when they come to the overworld, they turn into zombie piglins, kind of, it's showing that there's some sort of virus or some disease just in the air that, like modern animals aren't affected by, but stuff from the Nether who can be affected by it are, like, I as in the piglins, because I don't think, like, blazes or wither skeletons are really affected by, like, diseases like that. But then I thought, if populations of Sniffers had been brought to the overworld literally thousands of years ago, that would obviously give, populations enough time to develop, like, a natural immunity to diseases that they were exposed to. I mean, that's just how stuff works like that. Again, I love this theory. It was definitely really cool. Oh, love it. So yeah, the hidden history of the Sniffer. Who knew? So yeah, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my film theory reaction, and with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.